As I stand here and speak these words, the world is still reeling from the coronavirus. Families, neighbors, friends, healthcare workers are all in some state of shock, grief, anger, and numerous other emotions they could not even begin to describe. Mount Fuji stands there as if a monument to calm and permanence. I took these photos on New Year's Day 2020 with the hope of the new year laid out at everyone's feet. The Olympics were coming, the new decade was dawning, and we all wondered what this year would bring. Fuji stands there now as it did on New Year's Day, as it stood when I first came to Japan in 2002, and as it has stood in this form for over 300 years. It is one of nature's most iconic tapestries, and is the symbol that comes to nearly every mind when they consider the nation of Japan. But like our lives that have been upset by a pandemic, and for many lives further inflamed by the deaths of George Floyd and the subsequent protest, by the brutal quashing of Hong Kong protests, by the acts of violence that continue unabated worldwide, and the continued burning of our environment, Mount Fuji is not merely a symbol of calm and perseverance, some sort of unchanging truth, but rather that of a similar foreboding, a promise of ominous, inflamed destruction which mostly dwells far from the conscious in the best of times, and in the worst of times can bubble forth and break free with frightening speed and ferocity. Fuji, like the human condition, is not unchanging. Part of its awesomeness is that underlying promise of change, potential for violence, and great beauty, all at the same time. Lest we forget that seemingly unchanging presence we have enjoyed and which Japanese Shinto practitioners have long worshipped, that nearly perfect symmetrical cone which, when asked to draw a volcano, children unknowingly produce a picture that looks like Mount Fuji. That perfect shape has not always existed there, however, and the odds of it changing again in the not-too-distant future are odds that most geologists would not bet against. But does that mean we should not step back and marvel in the beauty and majesty of Mount Fuji's natural power? Must we resist the pull and influence it has on our minds, our art, and our emotions? Of course not. Do we also allow something so powerful to fade into the background, to become unremarked upon, even as scenery? Of course we do. As we go about our daily lives, the human condition and the great mountain can easily be subsumed by our daily concerns and passions. One of my great surprises was that the people who live at the foot of Mount Fuji tend to ignore it, and even somehow forget that it is there. It's always there, they say. So what? Have you climbed it, I ask? Why would I climb it? That's for tourists. Violence, protests, destruction, change at the hands of humans, it's always there. So what? Why think about it? That's for activists. In the course of our daily lives, we blot out the bigger pictures, the things we don't need to think about perpetually, even though they may be something far more important in the end. This is one motivation for this channel, giving me the chance to step out from my daily routine to embrace the larger picture of life in Japan. And since I am not a local, I can climb Fuji, so to speak, because as a newcomer, I bring a wider, more open perspective because it is all new and all different to me. But the trap awaits even us outsiders. We assume we know more than we do simply because our perspective begins as more open. We narrow it to judgments that are mostly uninformed, rather than embrace that openness and lack of expectations as a chance to change ourselves rather than others. And then, 10, 15, 20 years of living here, now we are just another local, also ignoring the mountain. I would like to tell you a story. Konohana Sakuyahime, or Sakuyahime, is the mythical princess whose story has become important to Mount Fuji and the surrounding area. The story tells of the daughters of the mountain god. Sakuyahime, the blossom princess, symbol of transitory human life, and Iwanagahime, the rock princess, symbol of strength and permanence. One day, while they are spending time at the seashore, Sakuyahime meets Ninigo no Mikoto, or Ninigi, the great-grandfather of Emperor Jimmu, the legendary first emperor of Japan. They fall in love, and Ninigi asks the mountain god for his daughter's hand in marriage. The mountain god understandably recommends the rock princess, but Ninigi is determined to have Sakuyahime. They wed, and Sakuyahime immediately gets pregnant. Ninigi rather foolishly becomes jealous and accuses his wife of infidelity. Sakuyahime is justifiably outraged and retires to a small hut to bear her 3 children. In order to demonstrate her purity, she sets fire to the hut and successfully delivers her babies while engulfed in flames. The story illustrates Sakuyahime's power over fire. Over time, this story and the princess become linked with Mount Fuji. Sakuyahime is now generally regarded as the deity Mount Fuji and is also unsurprisingly associated with easy childbirth. She is also, of course, the great-grandmother of Emperor Jimmu, at least according to legend. Kami or Shinto gods can be a difficult concept, but at the same time fundamentally so simple. They can really only be experienced directly and cannot really be grasped intellectually. However, Kami can be understood as the spiritual force that is in all things and that makes up all things. It can be felt directly as the sacred power of things to naturally inspire us with awe and wonder. There are said to be Kami in all things, including rocks and other so-called inanimate objects. It is said that you can feel them, or their power at least, when visiting certain sacred areas. A common thing I have heard people say at Fushimi Inari, the famous shrine of the many, many red torii gates in Kyoto, is that kuki ga omoi, or the atmosphere is heavy. There is something very raw and primal about real Shinto. The mountains and the natural border on the supernatural and are the realm of the gods. And you get this theme very strongly if you ever watch any Miyazaki Hayao movies from Studio Ghibli, such as Princess Mononoke or Spirited Away. The purpose of those red torii gates are to mark the borders between the regular world and the world of the spirits. It is hardly surprising then that Mount Fuji, a humbling force, both beneficent and terrifyingly destructive, has a central role to play in Shinto rituals. Purists, or those who know Shinto, say that when you pray at a Shinto shrine, you should not be asking for something. Rather, you should be praying to be left alone, that bad things do not happen. The gods meddle, the gods cause disasters, so a pregnant woman would not ask Sakuyahime for easy childbirth, but rather that the childbirth not be difficult. Mount Fuji erupts and causes chaos and death. But Fuji does not only erupt fire, scorching winds, and ash. Mount Fuji also erupts culture and tradition and beauty. The story of Sakuyahime plays out every August in Fujiyoshida, Yamanashi, where they hold the annual Himatsuri, or fire festival. There the goddess Sakuyahime enters into the Mikoshi, or portable shrine, where she then rides through the city and sees the giant pyres of wood that locals have set ablaze, fires which loom taller than the tallest citizen. The message is clear. The plea is clear. Look, goddess, look at all this fire. We remember and we know. Please do not send any more fire down upon us. This is who we are. Ordinary people living ordinary lives, trying to do the best with what they have. But there is always something deeper underneath. We learn of and are implored to remember the eruptions of human history and what we can learn of the advances and occasional retreats of humankind. But outside these lessons, we fall into the routine of the placid mountain. Those upheavals are not us. Those historical events are not us. But they are us, and they become us. We are experiencing dual eruptions of pandemic and social unrest right now. One is the awesome power of nature reminding us of our mortality, and one is the awesome power of responsibility to our neighbors, our cities, and to something greater than ourselves, that we create change in the world that we need most dearly. Perhaps someday we can all reach the quiet beauty of Mount Fuji on New Year's morning 2020. But until then, we should do all that we can to take care of ourselves and one another, and never ever forget that which makes us what we are, and, as a New Year's promise, what we might become. I wrote these words on June 2nd, 2020, in response to the fires that are ablaze in Minneapolis and throughout the United States, and the ongoing pandemic that overshadows all these things. I want to wish everyone out there who listens to this, and everyone out there who doesn't listen to this, that you have the brightest of futures, and that we can all have more love and happiness in all of our lives. Thank you for watching, and catch you on the next one.